Yeah, we're fairly hopeful that Jack will get through the training session that we're about to have and put his hand up for selection. So that's where we sit with Jack.
So it's still touch and go even at this point?
Well, he needs to, like everyone, he needs to get through the main training session, which we're about to have, and if he does that, he's available for selection. So
if he gets through, will he play?
Oh, I'd say so, yep.
How do you see this match?
Pardon?
General thoughts, how do you see this match as favourite?
I don't know who favourite is. Yeah, it's a good question. I don't do the gambling thing. I don't know who would be rated as favourites, but it'd be both sides similar. I think in terms of experience that will take the field. If we manage to field a side with more experience than the opposition, that's only going to be for the second time for the year that we've been able to do that. So in terms of that, yeah, it should be a really close tussle because I'm pretty sure on those stats we match up fairly evenly.
The last time you did that, you won.
That's right. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, look, as it's been well documented in a development phase, we've averaged every time we've played a game of footy this year 65 gains of experience per player, and we've seen some improvements with a whole heap of areas, but we also know that nearly 150 games of AFL footy have been played this year, and only 3 times as the winner had less than 65 games of experience. So we know where we are in terms of an age bracket and an experience bracket, but we put a lot of faith in our young players in particular, and they're showing some improvement. And this week, we'll be up against a side of similar experience, so it's a really good opportunity to put our best foot forward.
Because where the clubs that you've got to focus on small games, the next 3 matches you face the other 2 teams right down the bottom. Do you sort of focus on that as like almost a little block to sort of get a starting block for next year to say, look, at least we can beat these 2 teams and you go off from there?
No, not at all. Like I said before, with the statistics, we know that we're in a development phase. That's obvious. All you need to do is have a look at the experience of the games played, and so it's one of continual learning. And if you do that, what you do is you just end up going from every 7-day block from game to day. You can't afford to do that when you're in the phase that we're in, and it's about continual coaching, continual learning, and method of play and method of training.
What was the biggest issue in last week's game? Was it the ability to generate inside 50s or the way the forward lines functioned?
Oh no, the biggest issue that we had was if you look at the game against the Roos from a quarter by quarter basis, was the first quarter with the indicators that we use, say, it's like your 1% or your old 1% measurement. It really measures effort, really. And in the first quarter, our ratings, were quite high. And we can, when you're in that type of learning environment, we can cop that. North Melbourne, the way they moved the footy in the first quarter was particularly good. And we know that we've got a young group that are learning how to defend. One of the, that's really what's happening. And so we can cop that. The second quarter, we raised the bar again with some of our ratings and our efforts, and we squared the quarter, which was really good. The biggest I suppose area that we want to eradicate and get better at quickly was the fade out in the third quarter. Like our ratings, our internal ratings, really effort ratings were really poor, and that's something that as a group we need to eradicate, and that doesn't really. In terms of games played, we just need to be playing what we would call, the right way, the way that we want to play. And so the biggest disappointment was not seeing that in the third quarter. And we got it back a little bit in the fourth quarter, and we squared the quarter again. So that stuff comes well before, forward lines and all those types of things. And that's exactly where teams are that have the experience that we trot out every week. But we know that, and we're working really hard on it.
What does the playing group identify during the week as the reason for saying that?
There's never one in particular reason. There's a whole heap of reasons. Well, one is obviously this stage of the year. We've got a lot of young bodies out there that are AFL footy's tough, and so there's a little bit of that. In that quarter, we didn't get an across the board effort and it wasn't just the a couple of the young guys. So we need to make sure at all times everyone's involved with what we want to do. So that'd be the area that we've discussed more than anything else in the first part of the week.
You've only got 5 games, but how advanced are you in deciding who you definitely want around for next year and who you think's not going to make it?
So list management discussions are something that happen on a weekly basis at all AFL clubs, and we're exactly the same. So you learn more about your list and as every week goes, and we're list management and full-time AFL footy, they're weekly or twice weekly discussions. So we're exactly the same as the other 17 clubs with that regard.
And yes, without Jara and Clark, you seemingly really need a key forward there. Cook was a high draft pick in the seconds, haven't been tried yet. Do you sort of subscribe to the philosophy you just give him a go to see how he goes, or does he really have to earn his spot down there first before he comes up?
No, not one to give games away. Lucas, as you say, he missed the pre-season, so he's been at our football club for 2 years, has yet to complete a full pre-season. So started late, I missed a few games halfway through the year in the VFL. He's just starting to string some games together. We think that Lucas is going reasonably well at VFL level, but he hasn't played yet enough footy to really warrant AFL selection. So it's not the correct thing to do by Lucas to put him into the side just yet, because he's not ready to go.
Is Liam going to play in the VFL this week?
No, he's not. No. We want Liam just to have a little bit more conditioning before we put him out there to play a game of footy.
So is that next week, or just like?
Hopeful next week, but I won't give a guarantee either way.
Is he any chance of playing season footy again this year?
Again, yeah, that's a hypothetical. We've got to see how well he comes back in the VFL. We'll wait and see.
What's his state of mind like, Mark, after those preliminary hearings? Is he sort of feeling okay, and have you had a sort of good word to him?
Yeah, I've chatted with Liam every day this week. He would appear, he seems happy to be back involved with doing what he really enjoys doing. So he's been here every day, trained hard every day, and so he seems good.
How does the whole tanking talk sit with you, the fact that it's about your club at the moment?
Look, the club's issued the statement that we support the investigation that the AFL are conducting, and that's how I sit with it.
Are you worried that you now, as a current coach, may face the sanctions of the past?
Yeah, well, that's a similar question to you, I suppose, similar style of question to what you asked about Liam. Dealing with hypotheticals is not coaches go. We'll wait, see what happens with the AFL investigation and deal with it then.
Has it been distracting though for training this week? Because the players have been questioned. It's obviously been affecting them in some way.
Has it?
It appears to.
In what? Well, you have to give me some examples, because I can't answer that. I haven't seen it.
Well, I just mean the players have been, bombarded by media trying to get them to talk about it. So, is it affecting them? Is it in the back of their mind?
No, the attitude that I have with the media is that it's certainly a part of the game, and our players need to be able to deal with the media, because, for example, the clubs that are at the top end of the ladder playing finals, when you get down to the last week in September, if you've been unable to deal with the media and the circumstances of having people shove microphones in your face in and out of the footy club, if you can't deal with that, well, I think you've probably chosen the wrong sport, because it's going to happen if you get to the pointy end.
So you haven't noticed any effect on them in their training at all?
No.
I know you've been a coach for a year, Mark, but
Yeah.
You've been a footy observer for 30 years. Do you reckon tanking has gone on in the past?
Look, we've put out. I'm not going to enter into the tanking debate at all. Just give it a bird.
I'd like to get your response on, because it was about your current club now.
Yeah, sure.
Because Ballroom is saying that it has to affect the culture of a club if it has happened in the past.
Yep.
What's your response to that, I guess?
To Paul Roos's comment, I haven't read it, so I'm not. So if that's a direct quote, so what did he say?
It was during the Brock McLean interview, and
Yep.
he said that if experimenting, as they called it, went on in the past, that has to affect the culture of a club going forward? Because if you're not trying 100% to win your games, it has to affect the culture in the future.
Gee, is that a direct quote, the last bit?
Well, I'm not giving you a direct quote, but I could go and type it down and give it to you.
Yeah,
more or less.
Gee whiz, all my dealings with the Melbourne Footy Club and the players have been of really high integrity. I take offence to the fact if anyone said that any footballer has taken the field and not tried. Is that what you're saying? Is that?
He's saying that if you set up players at one point, it's not giving the right message, and then in a couple of years' time, you still have to feel the effects of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Yeah. Well, Paul's entitled to his opinion.
Do you think the players are angry about the distraction?
Yeah, we haven't discussed it, so I'm not sure. The way that our players have, trained and gone about their business this year has been really professional, really young group, inexperienced, and they're learning to play footy in a particular way. They're learning to conduct themselves as AFL players, and they're doing a really good job. Our club's had, a few issues this year that we've had to deal with that a little bit unusual, and there's a lot of learnings, and they're doing a really good job.
And we'll get a better idea of selection tonight, but how close are Gisbert's, Evans and Morton? How are they going in the VFL?
Jordan Gisbert's, yeah, we know that Jordan was a high draft pick. He has had an unfortunate run of injuries. I think he broke his ankle at the start of the year, and then he came back and broke his jaw, so that's not ideal. So he's been back now for probably about 5 weeks. Having missed a chunk of the footy, being a midfielder, he's really working on his game fitness. He's not too far away. If Jordan continues the form that he's in, we need to make a decision probably this afternoon whether or not Jordan has really got enough match fitness under his belt to play AFL midfield. Michael Evans, well, he certainly hasn't. He's only been back 2 weeks, and he's only trained for 5 weeks. We didn't see Michael at all until 5 weeks ago. So 2 games in the VFL to be ready to play AFL footy is certainly not for Michael, but he has got a lot to gain by playing in the VFL in the short term and just getting used to playing footy and the rigours of, playing, recovering, getting up again. And Cale Morton, Cale played really well last week in the VFL for Casey against Frankston. He'll no doubt, he'll be. We've had a preliminary match committee, and Cale came up in discussion, and we've got our final one this afternoon. So he's in pretty good form, Cale. So we'll go close.
One more. Yeah. How hard is it to keep the group focused, given that there's uncertainty around individuals' future?
Look, Pete, it is that to me sometimes is a bit of a mystery. And I know that we have to tell the story about what happens at footy clubs from day to day. It's not very hard at all to keep people motivated. This is their job. This is what they do. And you want to play AFL footy, you certainly want to be the best AFL player that you can be. And the players bring that all the time. That's what they do. It's very hard to explain to people that don't see that day in, day out. So it's really simple, and especially, the other, I suppose, thing that sometimes is a source of frustration is that what is reported and what's talked about, the idea that you just go from game to game when you've got a young group, couldn't be further from the truth. You use the games to learn, but reality is reality. We know exactly the experiences of our group and what we're trying to do, and we've got a really good group of young players in particular that, we need to do a little bit of reshaping to our list. But, we've got a cool group of players that'll be really good for our footy club. We've got great faith in them, and they're professional AFL players.